So it's kind of a dual thing. I would
Mhm.
add to high achiever also someone who understands the process of
Mhm.
excellence.
Mm.
Because excellence is not perfectionism.
Mhm.
Perfectionism is a trap, but excellence is a very good or outstanding outcome. And when you really understand the process of excellence and how you relate to excellence, it helps you to be in that space more consistently. And it's really about the process because, like you said, you have to be the best that day.
Yeah.
And I know if you cyberstalked me, you also saw that when I was 16 years old, I missed the Olympic team by 2/100ths of a second, even though I was second in the world.
Yeah.
And it was at that moment, the last two hurdles of the 400-meter hurdle race, the race broke down.
I'm Julie B, and you're playing the game of leadership. Hey there, I'm Julie B, and this is the Game of Leadership. On this show, I interview athletes who have become entrepreneurs and business leaders about how their experience as an athlete has elevated their leadership and their businesses. Today, I'm super excited to interview Leslie Maxie, the owner of Maxi Media Group. And before starting her company, Leslie had quite the athletic career as an U.S. Olympian, and she's a world record holder in the 400-meter hurdles. Leslie, I'm so looking forward to having you on the show today. I know we're going to learn a lot about leadership, about business, and about how, your athletic career really has propelled you into a successful business owner. So, welcome to the Game of Leadership, and thanks for being here today.
Thanks for having me, Julie.
Yeah. So let's just kick it off. Tell us a little bit about Maxi Media Group and what that is, what you do, and give us the lay of the land for what you're doing there today.
Okay. Well, I started Maxi Media Group 10 years ago, a little over 10 years ago, and it was the second iteration of my entrepreneurial journey. I first had a television production company, and then in 2008, when the economy went crazy, it was like,
Mm-hmm.
support the dream, support the kids. Kids won
Yeah.
just by a little bit. So I went in corporate for a couple of years, got a little cover, and then as soon as it was safe to come out, I came out.
Yeah.
But Maxi Media Group really aggregates all of my background in media. I worked for Special Olympics in my first corporate job in marketing and running the western portion of the state. And then I moved over to the Baltimore Orioles, worked for a couple of years in PR and marketing as well. Went to a boutique marketing firm, Sports Visions in California. I worked on air for 30 years as a talent
Mm-hmm.
in television. I started in television when I was 9 years old, came back
Wow.
to it when I was 30. And then I worked in international communications for Red Bull Racing, launching two of their Formula One teams. So I give that background because Maxi Media Group, the tagline is your media needs under one umbrella.
Mm.
And the reason why that's important is because when my team looks at something, it's not just looking at it, oh, you're a broadcaster looking to level up your skill. I'm looking at it from the perspective of being behind the camera, in front of the camera, being the PR person, being the marketing person. So all of these different facets come together for Maxi Media Group. I've had clients such as Viacom, Toyota, the New York Jets, the NFL Commissioner's Office, New Jersey Pageant, Crisis Communications. So it really has been a large breadth of experience that I've enjoyed and my team has enjoyed. When I turned 50, it's a little shift in my business because I took a step back and I said, I asked that question that no entrepreneur is ever going to do, but what would I do if I wasn't being paid to do it?
Yeah.
And I love connecting with audiences myself, being able
Mm-hmm.
to share my experience in a way that will touch, move, and inspire them to action in their own lives. And I really love to help speakers to find their voice, particularly women speakers.
Mm-hmm.
And so I began as a company leaning into the speaking space. So
Mm.
training athletes, executives, and activists who are front facing to the camera or speak from the stage, and keynote speaking around the world myself.
Yeah.
And then in concert with that, I launched an initiative. Realizing that my girlfriends and I were in a loop of a conversation around change and transition. And so I said, if we all came together, since we exist in relationships, I'm here for you, you're here for me, and together we're better.
Hmm.
How could we really help one another to design our lives 2.0? And so I started a movement called Not Your Mama's 50, and it has been my baby and my heart. And we just got our trademark through the trademark department for the United States government,
Yeah.
and really really excited because it's such a great time for women over 50, and for us to be in the thick of it is pretty exciting.
Yeah, and anybody who's gone through the trademarking process with the U.S. government knows that is a feat in itself. So congratulations and kudos on that because
Thank
that
you.
takes forever. So Leslie, I want to ask you. You mentioned a lot of different things that you've done over the years, and I noticed when I was researching you slash cyber stalking, I noticed that you somewhere I saw that you said you've been an entrepreneur since you were entrepreneurial spirit at least since a very young age. And I wanted to ask you, what is your favorite part about being an entrepreneur, about being a business owner? What do you just love about doing that every day for a living?
Yeah, the thing I love about it is the ability to have a vision and see it to fruition. You
Mm,
know, a lot of times when you're working in corporate, you have a piece of the overall vision.
mm-hmm,
And it's important that you are doing your part and the person to your right, and the person to your left are doing theirs as well,
mm-hmm,
so that you can achieve the thing that you collectively have your eye on. And as a business owner, it's really incumbent on me to have that vision
mm-hmm.
and to enroll other people in that vision so
Yeah.
that we can bring it to fruition. And that is so exciting. It really is. And being able to set the culture. You know,
Mm-hmm.
culture and strategy are two of the most important things in any business endeavor. And, you know, it says biblically, as the head goes, so goes the body.
Mm-hmm.
And so to have that both responsibility and privilege
Mm-hmm.
of setting the strategy, setting the culture that is all birthed out of the vision is really the thing that I find most exciting about being an entrepreneur.
So how do you go about, kind of galvanizing and getting your team excited about the vision and the culture? I think a lot of people approach this, and there's many different ways I think you can approach it. And I think it's interesting to talk to the business owners who are excited about their vision. How do you go about getting people on board with it and getting them excited about it as well?
Yeah, I think it comes from a deep seated belief. You know, enrollment is about being able to articulate your vision, one, knowing what it is,
Mm-hmm.
two, being able to articulate it in a way that people can connect with it and see their role in it, to know that they are an important component
Mm-hmm.
of bringing that vision to fruition. And it's like, for me, I don't even consider it sales. You
Yeah.
know, I'll give you my speaking business, for instance.
Mm-hmm.
When I am coaching someone, you're not going to find ads online, you know, join Leslie Maxie. There's been a couple of
Yeah.
times when I've done a cohort where I have sent out information so people know that it's available and that they can do the training for a lower ticket price, but also with other individuals. But for my one-to-one training, I don't advertise for it. You
Mm-hmm.
know, it is when I meet people, because I like and love people.
Mm-hmm.
I love people's stories. It's almost impossible for me to hear someone's story and not see how they could be on stage
Mm-hmm.
sharing that story. And so it's very much an extension of who I am and how I show up in the world. You know, people have asked me, well, what do you do for fun? And I'm like, I really love what I do. And so
Yeah.
many times, oftentimes, even when I'm vacationing, there's usually some element of my work that's associated with it because it's such an extension of who I am.
Yeah.
And so when I think about enrollment, I think it starts with belief. It
Mm.
starts with belief.
Mm-hmm. And it's so interesting. You said, what do you do for fun? And I have the same answer. You know, I have forced hobbies because I do recognize how important it is to do something other than business. But if I didn't do that, I mean, business is work, but it's also fun for me. Learning new tools, meeting new people. Like I think I could be happy just doing that, and that could be a hobby and everything else. But my partner is very, she's like, you've got to have a hobby, and I mean, I know the importance of that too. So I kind of force myself to have hobbies, basically.
Yeah.
I get
Yeah.
that, and I think a lot of business owners understand that as well. Yeah, so with you are obviously, it's when I ask this question, people are like, oh, I don't know, but you're obviously a high achiever, Leslie. I mean, with everything that you've done in
I've
your
had
in
my
your
moments.
you have your moments, yeah. And I interviewed somebody who said that when you are competing, it's not necessarily you have to be, especially in the Olympics, you have to be the best on that day. It doesn't mean, so if you don't get where you want to on that day, it doesn't mean that you're not the best or really fantastic. I mean, you got to be fantastic to get there anyways, but you've got to be the best in that moment on that day, like no matter, like, to win. So I wanted to ask you from your perspective, how has being a high achiever in your athletic career, how have you seen that really help you in business as a business owner?
Yeah. I would say it's kind of a dual thing. I would
Mm-hmm.
add to high achiever also someone who understands the process of excellence,
Mm-hmm.
because excellence is not perfectionism.
Mm-hmm.
Perfectionism is a trap, but excellence is a very good or outstanding outcome. And when you really understand the process of excellence and how you relate to excellence, it helps you to be in that space more consistently. And it's really about the process, because like you said, you have to be the best that day.
Yeah.
And I know if you cyber stalked me, you also saw that when I was 16 years old, I missed the Olympic team by 2/100ths of a second, even though I was second in the world.
Yeah.
And it was at that moment, the last two hurdles of the 400-meter hurdle race, the race broke down. And so it is about the process. It can't always be about the outcome.
Mm-hmm.
The outcome is important, because if you're not always keeping that as your North Star, then you will be in a state of analysis paralysis.
Mm-hmm.
You can chase your tail forever around process. So
Yeah.
you do have to be committed to the outcome, and you get to be really invested in the process, because the process you can take and apply to any place in your life, and
Mm-hmm.
that's the key.
Hey, this is Julie B, and thanks for watching The Game of Leadership. I'm here with Leslie Maxie, and we were just talking about how being a high achiever and being excellence focused, and not necessarily what Leslie. I'm going to probably butcher this, but what I hear is the progress, not perfection. That's part of that
Yeah,
process. And I want
absolutely.
to kind of ask you the flip side of that question. Have you ever found in business where being that excellence focused, being that high achiever, has maybe hindered you some? Have you ever found that in your business as well?
Oh, absolutely.
Tell me a
It
story.
absolutely has. I mean,
Yeah.
we talked about hobbies,
Mm-hmm.
and when you think about hobbies, it's a way for you to disconnect.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, the it's almost like this hyper focus that I can have,
Mm-hmm.
and it has me like really lasered in, where there's almost like blinders up.
Mm-hmm.
Now in athletics, you need that. My
Mm-hmm.
coach always said, you're running in one lane.
Yeah.
So don't worry about what the person's doing here or the person's doing there. If you can't take care of that one lane, it won't matter what they're doing anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the same way in business. But in business, we also have these other elements of our lives. Our marriages, our partners,
Mm-hmm.
we have our children. If you have children, you have other family members. We are caregivers a lot of times when we're starting to get
Mm-hmm.
older, and all of these things require us to be connected to it. And so it's creating a balance. And I hate the phrase work-life balance, because I think that's utter BS. There are times when, there are certain times in our lives where we can really lean into what comes naturally to us. Like, I'm a summer person. It
Mm-hmm.
is no problem for me to be able to get it up and rolling in the summer. In
Mm-hmm.
the winter, not so much. I've never taken a winter vacation. A winter vacation is me going someplace hot, and it's kind
Yeah.
of the same way in our lives. If there are there are different things that we are required to bring to the equation of our life. And if we're not doing or bringing a certain thing, we're not giving ourselves that quiet time,
Mm-hmm.
then that part of our life is going to suffer, which means everything else in our life is going to suffer. And so, what I mean with that, as far as it pertains to business, and any time that my high achieving has really hindered me, it's when I have been so laser focused in one area and have let something else that was equally important, maybe not something that got my heart racing as much,
Mm-hmm.
but I let that fall by the wayside.
Yeah, and I think that's a common challenge that business owners face is that we tend to really want to focus on the things that get our heart racing, get us excited, and then sometimes there's we need, even if you don't like to, you got to review your profit and loss statement, like those types of things that
I was
yeah, you
just
have to
thinking of
do.
that when you
Yeah,
said it.
yeah. Who loves doing that? Not very many business owners, but you have to, like, that's part of the job description, I think, when you're an entrepreneur. So that chasing the shiny object or focusing on it, the thing that gets your heart racing, is just something that a lot of us do, but definitely keeping that balance is taking the blinders off. Basically, you can't have the
Yeah.
blinders on when you're running the race, I guess, as an entrepreneur. So Leslie, one thing I love to ask, especially athletes who become business owners, is have you ever experienced burnout? Either most of the time the answer is definitely as an athlete, sometimes maybe not as business. But if you could talk through any experiences you've had with burnout and how you kind of got through those, that'd be really helpful to the audience.
Yeah. I mean, I think on a yearly basis almost, I
Mm,
experience some level of burnout.
mm-hmm,
And what I've learned over the last decade or so is, if I specifically schedule in times where I'm going to be disconnected, I'm not going to be taking business calls,
mm-hmm,
I'm not going to be setting up meetings, I'm not going to be even sitting down working on strategy. I'm just disconnected.
mm-hmm,
That if I know that time frame is 6 weeks away or 8 weeks away or
mm-hmm,
whatever, and it's going to be 3 days that I'm going to do it, or a week that I'm going to do it, or whatever, then it allows me to kind of level set my activity and effort leading up to that, so that I can remain in that excellence frame, and be able to get there without dipping off. But then when it's time to really take the dip
mm-hmm.
and not worry about if something didn't get done, as long as it's not a life or death thing,
Yeah,
it's okay.
yeah,
It's okay, because at the end of the day, it actually isn't a race. And I
mm-hmm,
know that sounds weird coming from an Olympian. It isn't a race.
yeah,
There isn't anybody with a pendulum over my head that all is going to go to hell in a handbasket if I
yeah,
don't do X, Y, or Z. So, and then the other thing is, and this is a language thing, I try and be really specific about the language that I use, because it creates the experience that I have in anything. So I try not to say hard work. I say I work diligently,
mm-hmm,
and the action is the same, but the experience of it is different.
yeah,
I try not to frame my life in a have to, but really frame it in a get to. Everything that I do, trust me, when I'm at my home office, I have this little sign, and you can see it in almost any interview that I do, and it says everything is always working out for me,
mm,
because it is. Because at the end of the day, I have lived a pretty fantastic life. And yeah, I've gotten the opportunity to work diligently to achieve the things that I've achieved.
mm.
Um, but it's been spectacular. It almost sounds like I'm 8 years old looking back on it, but like I'm 56 and I'm like, damn girl, you have done some shit. I'm sorry, you've done some stuff.
Yeah,
And so it's like, being able to look at my life in that way helps me to not get into the space of burnout. And it
mm-hmm,
helps me to be really prescriptive about how and where I assign my time,
mm-hmm.
and really making sure that I'm also assigning some time where I can specifically be off of the clock.
Mm. That's so important. Is I and I think what I hear is that you are actively practicing burnout prevention. Like, you do a lot
Ding,
to,
ding, ding.
yeah, you do a lot to not let it even get there. Because it's, I tell a lot of business owners, burnout is, I believe for business owners, it's almost inevitable just because of how we're wired and how hard we run. So if you're not looking for it or knowing the warning signs of it or planning some time to decompress, it's going to catch up with you. And I think that that's really the secret to having a long career as a business owner and as an entrepreneur. Is That's one of the keys, is making sure that you take the time to take care of yourself, for sure.
Agreed.
Hey there, you're watching The Game of Leadership. I'm the host, Julie B., and I'm here with Leslie Maxie, and we're just having a great conversation. And Leslie, I want to circle back to something you said a little bit earlier. You talked a lot about your team and the perspective they give you, or just the perspective from your team. And can you talk a little bit about how important that has been in your business career, and how valuable that has been? And maybe if you have any examples of what that looks like, that'd be great as well.
Well, in my company, I work primarily with strategic business partners.
Mm,
So there'll be other entrepreneurs, business owners who
yeah.
have a particular skill set
Hmm.
or an area of expertise that they have. And as I've had people call me a rainmaker. It's like I've never had a problem making money. It's like money finds me.
Yeah.
And so, but when you have those opportunities,
Hmm.
how do you get to leverage your network, your team,
Hmm.
to really see it to fruition, to actualize it?
Hmm.
And so that's a lot of what I do. And when I think about the connection with my team, I said earlier that I really love people. I
Hmm.
That's just me. I mean,
Yeah.
I feel like the world or people that are friends that just haven't met me yet.
Mm.
And so
Yeah.
it's difficult for me to not have a personal investment in the people with whom I work.
Hmm.
But I also think that that's part of my superpower,
Hmm.
is that people know that I care about them. And it allows you to bring feedback or even a critique with a spirit of love and compassion, so that we are all able to level up. Because feedback is information. It's not right, it's
Yeah.
not wrong, it's just information.
Yeah.
But when you are able to share that with love, it really allows someone to see where they may have a blind spot,
Hmm.
and make a course correction on that. And as a leader, to be able to show up with a level of vulnerability and openness, so my team knows that they can come to me and
Hmm.
say, hey, Leslie, this was my experience of this particular situation. And it was tough for me
Hmm.
to not see that thing get done. I just got done. I had an assistant who needed to transition out
Hmm.
because of health reasons. So
Hmm.
she's actually going to go back to school and do some other stuff.
Hmm.
But she was a wonderful young woman. I
Hmm.
really, really loved her and enjoyed working with her. And when we got done, I said, can you give me feedback on what I'm doing well, what I can do differently, areas of opportunities for growth for me, so that I can be an even better manager
Yeah.
of the next executive assistant that comes through. And when she first came in, there was a project that I had her work on, and she did her part of it, and I didn't finish it.
Hmm.
But it wasn't so much that I didn't finish it, but I didn't communicate the reasons why. I
Hmm.
just said, hey, we're going to put this on the shelf for a minute, and we're going to work on something else. And so she was always kind of looking back and going, but that was some of my best work.
Yeah.
So we talked about that, and I got to explain, oh, okay, the company that we were going to share that with actually had a strategy change in how they come to their ambassadorships. I
Mm.
said, so we're going to wait until they work it out, so we can position this proposal to really hit all of the pillars that they want to have happen.
Yeah.
Now, I didn't communicate that.
Mm.
And so for her, it was just like, wow, I did this really great, artwork, because she did a lot of design around it,
Hmm.
and it didn't see the light of day. So Communication is really, really important in setting the stage for a group, a
Yeah.
team, to be able to move forward in alignment,
Hmm.
because that's what it is we're trying to create.
Yeah. And those are two of the things that I think leaders, the really great leaders do well is one, they're vulnerable enough to ask for feedback. And when they get feedback of, you could have done this better, they take that and turn that into, they actually, for the next round, they do it better. And then the other thing is just the communication around, and I've experienced that too when I've decided to, I had my team work on something and then we just, I made the decision of we're not pursuing this path, but I wasn't clear enough in the communication as to why, and probably didn't place enough praise on the work they had done up until that point. There's always, I'm like, if you think you're doing enough communicating, you got to say it until you're tired of hearing it, and that's when it typically
Yeah.
starts to sink in for people. So
Mhm.
that's something I have learned over the years, and it sounds like those are lessons that you've taken as well
Yeah.
throughout your career.
I have a pretty robust inner life.
Yeah.
I have conversations where I'm like, okay, do it like this. Okay, look down the road, blah 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 blah. And if I'm not communicating those things, and one of the ways that this really was brought home to
Mm-hmm.
me was through my daughter.
Mm.
My daughter graduated from Columbia Barnard in production design, and she worked with me on a media activation for probably 4 years. I would do it every year, and I would hire her as one of the young people that worked.
Mm-hmm.
And so, she was like, Mom, she said, I can look at you and see when your wheels are turning and you're
Mm.
not saying anything and you look like you're engaged. She goes, and on a
Yeah.
level you are. She said, but you're also thinking like three
Mm.
steps down the road. She said, you have to tell us that so that
Mm-hmm.
we could take that and do it.
Mm-hmm.
She said, we're not mind readers.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of times, and I know, with vision comes this constant thought process,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm sure that you've experienced it too,
Mm-hmm.
where you're like, this is exactly what it is. Why can't you see it? Well, if you didn't say it, Leslie, then they can't
Yeah.
see it because they're not in red.
Yeah.
So, yeah, the communication thing really is big.
Yeah, I always say I can see 5 years down the road, but explaining what tomorrow looks like is nearly impossible for me. That's usually how it comes out for me. And so my team tends to the people who worked with me for a while, they understand that, and they will I've given them, or I've actually asked them to ask me to clarify. Okay, what do we need to do tomorrow? When
Yep,
is
don't be
this
afraid
thing
to
that you're
ask
talking
questions.
about? Yeah, like when is this
Mm-hmm.
thing that this vision that you have, when do you see it happening? Because when I talk with them about it, they're thinking, oh my gosh, this is something I have to implement right now. Whereas I'm thinking this is something that is a 5 year thing. So now I'm much better about, well, first of all, I'm better about filtering what I actually say. And then the other thing I've learned is when I do take an idea to my team, I have to say, this is a 3 year thing. This is not right now. This is just an idea that I would
Yeah.
like for you to just think about, but we don't need to implement anything on it right now. I've had to do that. Well, Leslie, I want to ask you, you have lived, yeah, the things that you have done in your life have been pretty impressive. So, and now where you are in your life, I'm curious as to what legacy do you hope to leave? What do you hope your legacy will be?
Wow, that's a tough question to answer,
Uh-huh.
and here's why. I try and take the wisdom from the things that I've done well and the places where
Mm-hmm.
I've been challenged, and use them in real time. And so when I think of legacy, the thing that I think of is that it's rooted in your character. So I want my legacy to be someone who cares for people, who openly demonstrates my love and affection and affinity for people. And I want that to show up in my work. I want for my legacy to be that I helped women over 50 to not be invisible,
Mm-hmm.
that I brought the conversation to to the world where they understand that we have a second act that can be even more impactful and expansive than the incredible things that we've achieved already. You know, we're the first generation of women who have had access to everything. Title IX for
Mhm.
sports. We've sent an all female crew into space. We have a female vice president. I mean, we have had access to everything. And when much is given, much is required. And so I want for women 50 and over to know that you have a lot of answers and you are not responsible for having all the answers,
Mm.
and that we can help one another to design our lives 2.0 in a most incredible way, and that we are here, and you do not value us at your own peril. If that could be my legacy, I'd be good.
Yeah. Man, I'm not even going to ask a follow-up question on that one because that's so great. So tell me what you have coming up. I know we talked a little bit before we started recording, but what do you have coming up that you're really excited about over the next several months here, and talk about that some.
Yeah, I mean, as an entrepreneur, it has been you're almost on a parallel track. You're creating the business and actually doing the business, and you are creating what's next within the business.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have been very successful in the space where we've worked in media consulting, and I'm really leaning into the Not Your Mama's 50 initiative
Yeah.
to create a lifestyle brand around it, so that we are the go-to space for women over 50. Whatever it is you're looking for, if it's products, if it's travel, if it's community, if it's data,
Mm-hmm.
all of these things are housed within the Not Your Mama's 50 community.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've partnered with an organization called the Alliance for Community Development, and I'm actually going to be their keynote speaker at the Bay Area Capital Connections. They're an organization that helps startups and entrepreneurs and founders to identify angel, seed, and VC money so that we can really scale our visions and have the impact in the world that we're capable of. So I'm really, really excited to be headlining this event. It's going to be October 5th in Oakland, California. And I'm so thrilled and honored that they've chosen me to be the person to bring their message forward.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's super exciting to when you get to, yeah, I mean, you're getting to help them bring their message forward, and you're going to get to, you know, continue your legacy, building that legacy that you are, you are a self-fulfilling prophecy in terms of the legacy that you are wanting
Oh,
to
thank
leave, which
you.
is amazing. Well, Leslie, listen, this has been such a great conversation. I've enjoyed it so much. But as we're coming to the end here of this interview, I want to ask you, what is a leadership skill or trait that you feel like you really learned as an athlete that has helped you the most as a leader and as a business owner?
Yeah. I think the skill that I've learned most was around process.
Mm.
I asked my coach, Mr. Parker, God rest his soul, but Mr. Parker had at least one Olympian on every Olympic team from 1956 to 1988. I was his last Olympian.
Mm.
And I said, Mr. Parker, if you could coach an athlete that could do whatever they could be bold enough to think of, or you could, but that athlete maybe was a little lazy or just took advantage of the fact that they had a lot of natural ability,
Mm-hmm.
or you could coach someone who maybe didn't have as much talent but was really, really committed to learning and growing and being the best that they could be. I said, who would you coach? And I framed this up like it was a hard question. I think it was like 15 or 16 at the time. He was like, oh, that's easy. He said, I'd coach the one who's willing to do the work. He said, because if we're willing to do the work, we can always get better.
Mm.
We can always get better. And that's the thing, the skill that I believe is most important in the work that I do. Yes, it's important to have vision. Yes, it's important to be able to enroll people in that vision.
Mm-hmm.
But if you don't have the process in place that will take it across the finish line,
Mm-hmm.
you might as well not start the race.
Yeah. Mm. Leslie, I have so enjoyed this conversation. I just want to thank you again today for being here and sharing your wisdom and your journey with the audience. Just thanks for being here again today, Leslie.
Thanks so much, Julie. Thanks for having me.
And that is it for this episode, but stay tuned because I'll be back soon with more conversations like this from athletes who have become entrepreneurs. I'm Julie B, and thank you for playing the game of leadership.